He had three guns, so he had a semi-automatic rifle, he had a pistol, and he had a shotgun. I mean, what a 23-year-old needed with all those three guns is unclear. But his videos show him with the three guns that were then later used in the attack, and he had hundreds of rounds of ammunition that he was showing to viewers of this YouTube channel.
First, we've had more updates from Minneapolis following the shooting this afternoon. In the last hour, it's been confirmed the FBI is investigating the shooting as an act of domestic terrorism and hate crime targeting Catholics. A gunman targeted a mass at a church attached to a school. It's been confirmed 2 children aged 8 and 10 were killed. 17 others have been injured. The Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey has responded.
These were American families. And the amount of pain that they are suffering right now is extraordinary. And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance.
Well, let's speak now to the Times' US correspondent, Josie Ensor. Josie, good evening.
Good evening.
What update can you give us on the 17 people who have been injured?
Yeah, so the casualty figure remains the same. So it's 2 dead and 14 children still injured. 2 of them or 3 of them are now in critical condition, undergoing surgery. The New York Times spoke to one person who was in the emergency room of one of these hospitals and said one of the children came in, very bloodied and scared, and was basically calling out, "Please don't let me die." So clearly some of these children are in very bad condition, but hopefully, they won't. The death toll won't keep mounting through the evening.
What do we know about Robin Westman, the 23-year-old shooter?
Yeah, so we've learned quite a lot about him in the last hour or so. And he was born Robert Westman, and he changed his name legally to Robin when he was 17 years old. And his mother, because he was a legal minor at the time, says in this paperwork in 2020 that the reason for doing so is that he now identified as a female. So this is clearly someone that underwent a change in their gender ideology in their teenage years, and so we don't see a lot of that discussed in the manifesto and the diaries that he shared online. But we see other quite disturbing things. It's clearly a very disturbed individual who kind of apologizes to his parents for what he's about to do, but says it's not their fault, and that he was disturbed by things he was seeing in the world. He talked about idealizing other school shooters. So he talks a lot about Adam Lanza being a big inspiration for him. Obviously, this was the Sandy Hook gunman who was responsible for one of the deadliest school shootings in US history. So, and what was also interesting is he had a kind of diagram of what looked like the inside of the church. So this was clearly premeditated and very planned. Westman himself, it seems, was actually a former student of this school. It seems he left age 15 in 2017. His own mother, Mary, seemed to be a parish secretary in the church. So clearly this is a family that lived within this area and knew the church and the school very well.
And I understand it's been confirmed the gun was purchased illegally, Josie.
Yeah, there have been those reports. I mean, he had 3 guns, so he had a semi-automatic rifle, he had a pistol, and he had a shotgun. I mean, what a 23-year-old needed with all those 3 guns is unclear. But his videos show him with the 3 guns that were then later used in the attack, and he had hundreds of rounds of ammunition that he was showing to viewers of this YouTube channel.
Josie, thank you. That's Josie Ensor there, the Times' US correspondent. We'll keep right across this story between now and 1 o'clock. There'll be plenty more, of course, on Times Radio Breakfast in the morning. The Pope has sent his heartfelt condolences to the victims of the shooting in Minneapolis that killed 2 children and injured 17 others. In a statement, the FBI says it's treating the incident as an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime targeting Catholics. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has been speaking for the first time since the shooting.
Instead of that joy and that curiosity and that learning, they were met with evil and horror and death. And we often come to these and say, these unspeakable tragedies, or there's no words for this. There shouldn't be words for these types of incidents because they should not happen. And there's no words that are going to ease the pain of the families today.
Joining me now from Minnesota is NPR News correspondent Peter Cox. Peter, hello. Tell us what the latest is.
So we have gotten updates recently, but, to kind of set the stage, at least 2 children were killed, 17 other people were injured, and this happened during a welcome back to school mass at the Annunciation Church and School in Minneapolis. School year had just started on Monday, and so this was kind of a welcome back mass, kind of a very community-centered kind of celebration in some ways. Police say the shooter appeared to do most of the shooting from outside through the windows. They had a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. And police say the shooter used all 3, firing dozens of rounds. They say it appears the shooter died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
What has been the reaction from not just parents and teachers, but also other members of the community there in Minnesota?
I mean, it has just been a pretty gutting day here. I was outside one of the hospitals where victims were taken and saw, different... A woman drove up to police and kind of frantically begged, saying, my daughter's in there, how do I get inside? A woman ran up and said her grandson was in there, so clearly a lot of grief with the parents and families. But I think stepping back, the broader community is just kind of shocked by this. We haven't had kind of a shooting this large in the Twin Cities. That's Minneapolis and St. Paul. And that's the main metro area in Minnesota. There have been some in other parts of the state, but this is the first that's really happened here and of this size. And it's just really been a shock for people.
Do we know any more about the gunman?
So authorities have identified the shooter as Robin Westman. The legal documents show that 5 years ago, Westman's mother applied for a name change for her 17-year-old from Robert to Robin, saying her minor child identifies as female and wants the name to reflect that. What we know is that police say Westman had no prior criminal history, had purchased the guns lawfully, and that there were no other suspects. Police say there is some kind of manifesto or suicide note that was online that they're looking over. They're also searching the church and 3 addresses related to Westman, but we're still really putting the pieces together of who this person was and what their motives were.
Peter, thank you for that update. That is Peter Cox there from NPR News in Minneapolis. Appreciate that update. And if there are any new lines, of course, we will bring them to you here between now and 1 o'clock. No doubt Times Radio Breakfast will be covering this as well in the morning.